This is the story of how my girlfriend, Sarah, and I broke up over a cup of tea. It's a tale of how I, Mark, a mild-mannered graphic designer, discovered the true nature of my relationship through a series of increasingly absurd events, culminating in the strategic deployment of an 80-pound Bernese Mountain Dog and a retired Broadway actress. Let's start at the beginning. Sarah and I had been together for 2 years, and for the last 6 months, she'd been living in my house. My name was on the mortgage, my name was on the bills, and my name was even on the little plaque by the door that read The Millers, which, looking back, was a wildly optimistic purchase by Sarah. I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I like my quiet life, I work from home, I have a couple of good friends, and my idea of a wild Friday night is trying a new brand of frozen pizza. Sarah, however, was not like that. Her life was a performance, and her audience was her 3 best friends, a cackling Greek chorus I privately referred to as the Sirens. Their names were Chloe, Isabella, and whatever the third one's name was. Let's call her Penelope. Our fundamental disagreement was about the nature of our reality. I believed that if you lived in someone's house, ate their food, and used their Wi-Fi, you were in a partnership. Sarah, on the other hand, believed she was a celestial body and I was a small, insignificant planet caught in her gravitational pull. The issue at hand came to a head one weekend. I was making dinner, my signature pasta with a red sauce that would make an Italian grandmother weep, when Sarah waltzed into the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, already dressed to go out. She was in the middle of a loud, one-sided conversation with the Sirens. "Oh my God, yes, I am so in," she said into the phone. "A weekend away is exactly what I need." Then, she looked at me and said, "No, he's not coming. Don't be ridiculous." She hung up and beamed at me. "Good news. The girls and I are going to the mountains for the weekend. Leaving tomorrow." This was the first I was hearing of it. "Oh, okay," I said, stirring the sauce. "Sounds fun. Which mountain are you all heading to?" It was a simple logistical question. A question a normal person in a normal relationship might ask. Sarah, however, looked at me as if I had just asked her to explain quantum physics in ancient Greek. She let out a short, sharp laugh and turned to Chloe, who had just walked in the door. "Can you believe him?" Sarah said, rolling her eyes. "He wants to know where I'm going." Chloe scoffed, looking me up and down like I was a piece of furniture she was considering throwing out. Sarah then turned back to me, put her hands on her hips, and delivered the line that would echo through the halls of history, or at least through my immediate future. "Stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with." The Sirens, who had all assembled in my kitchen by this point, burst into laughter. It was a symphony of derision. They genuinely thought this was the peak of comedy. A man in his own home being told he had no right to ask a simple question about his live-in girlfriend's plans. Hilarious. I just stood there holding a wooden spoon with pasta sauce dripping onto the floor. And I didn't get mad. I didn't argue. A strange, zen-like calm washed over me. The part of my brain that was trying to make this relationship work just packed its tiny bags, put on a tiny hat, and quietly left the building. I looked at her smug, smiling face, and I just smiled back. A big, friendly, completely empty smile. "You know what?" I said, my voice full of cheerful agreement. "You are 100% correct. My mistake." They all laughed again, thinking I was just backing down. Sarah gave me a condescending little pat on the cheek, and then they all swept out of the house, off to some pre-weekend away cocktail hour. I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, the silence broken only by the bubbling of the pasta sauce. "Okay," I said to myself, a new, much more interesting plan beginning to form. Not married. No say. Got it. The weekend was going to be fun after all, just not for her. The moment Sarah's car, presumably packed with 5 different types of glitter and a case of rose, disappeared down the street on Friday afternoon, I sprang into action. My first move wasn't packing or cleaning. It was a mission of strategic importance. I walked next door to Mrs. Robinson's house. Mrs. Robinson is an 80-year-old widow with a sweet smile, a prize-winning rose garden, and a surveillance network that would make the CIA jealous. Nothing happens on our street without her knowing about it. I brought her a slice of the lemon cake she likes and sat with her on her porch. Mrs. Robinson, don't you worry, Mark. You leave it to me. What's my line? I gave her a simple script. When Sarah returned and inevitably found herself locked out, she was to act confused and deliver a few key pieces of information. Mrs. Robinson took to the task with the enthusiasm of a seasoned Broadway actress preparing for opening night. With my accomplice secured, I returned home to begin what I called Operation Bachelor Pad Resurrection. My house, for the last 6 months, had been a sea of beige pillows. I took down the weird macrame thing she had hung over the bed and replaced it with a framed poster of a grizzly bear catching a salmon in its mouth. Felt right. Humming. The comedy began almost immediately. She tried her key. It slid into the lock but didn't turn. The new deadbolt I'd installed that morning was doing its job. She jiggled it, a look of mild annoyance on her face. She tried it again. Then she let out an exasperated sigh and started banging on the door. From the couch, Barney lifted his massive head, let out a deep, rumbling woof and then went back to sleep. Sarah started calling my phone. I watched it vibrate on the pinball machine, took a calm sip of my beer, and hit decline. She called again, and I declined again. This cycle repeated 5 times. The banging on the door got louder. Mark, open the door. What is wrong with you? My key isn't working. I remained silent. This was all part of the show. After another 5 minutes of increasingly frantic pounding, she seemed to give up. The doorbell camera showed her pacing on the porch, running her hands through her hair, and then right on cue, a porch light flickered on next door. It was Mrs. Robinson in her housecoat, holding a watering can. Showtime. Oh, Sarah, dear. Is that you? Mrs. Robinson called out, her voice a perfect blend of surprise and neighborly concern. Mrs. Robinson, thank God, Sarah said, rushing over to the edge of my porch. I can't get in. My key isn't working. Is Mark home? I can see the lights on. Oh, Mark's home, Mrs. Robinson said, nodding sagely. He's had the most wonderful weekend. A real transformation. Transformation? What are you talking about? Well, he told me the good news, Mrs. Robinson said, leaning on her railing conspiratorially. He said you two aren't married. He said he doesn't get a say in anything you do, so he decided to celebrate his newfound freedom. He redecorated the whole house. It's a man's home now, he said, very rugged. Sarah just stared, her mouth hanging open. And the best part, Mrs. Robinson continued, barely containing her glee. He got a dog, a great big beautiful boy named Barney. He said he wanted a companion who was loyal and didn't talk back. Isn't that sweet? The look on Sarah's face was a masterpiece of disbelief and horror. She slowly turned and peered through my living room window. From my vantage point on the couch, I saw her face pressed against the glass. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene. The football field rug, the pinball machine, and the giant, snoring Bernese mountain dog occupying her spot on the new sofa. She let out a sound that was somewhere between a scream and a sob. She whipped out her phone and started texting me. My phone lit up with a novel's worth of angry, all-caps messages. That's when I decided to respond. I sent her a single, simple text message. You said to stop acting like we're married. You said I don't get a say. I agree. This is my house and you don't get a say in how I live in it. Since we're not married, I've returned your non-marital property to a secure location. The address is 123 Storage Way, Unit 42. The code is 1234. You have 1 month. Have a great life. I then blocked her number. The doorbell camera showed her reading the text. She looked at her phone. She looked at the window. She looked back at her phone. Then she let out a scream of pure, unadulterated rage and threw her phone onto my lawn. It was a truly spectacular meltdown. She ranted and raved for another 10 minutes before Chloe, the siren, arrived to pick her up. The next day, the expected social media campaign began. Vague posts about being betrayed and about men who can't handle a strong, independent woman. It was pathetic. But I had one more card to play. The social media drama was predictable but also incredibly boring. Sarah and the Sirens posted stories with sad music, talking about the importance of knowing your worth and cutting out toxic energy. It was all so generic. It was almost funny. They were trying to paint me as a villain, but they were using a paint-by-numbers kit. I let them go on for about 2 days. Then I decided to provide some much-needed context. I didn't engage with them directly. Instead, I made a post on my own private social media page, visible only to our mutual friends. It was a photo album. The first picture was of my living room from a month ago. The sad, beige couch, the pointless bowls, the general aura of a dentist's waiting room. The caption read, "Before." The second picture was my living room now. The glorious leather recliner sofa, the football field rug, the glowing pinball machine, and Barney the Bernese mountain dog sprawled out and looking majestic. The caption read, "After." The final picture was a selfie of me and Barney on the couch. We both looked incredibly happy. The caption was simple. Decided to redecorate based on my new relationship status. It was brought to my attention that I'm not married and don't get a say in things, so I'm embracing my freedom. #BachelorPad, #DojaSmycoPilot, #Nozainake. The post was a nuclear bomb. The sheer unadulterated pettiness of it, combined with the undeniable cuteness of Barney, was a winning combination. My friends found it hilarious. The story, with the proper context, spread like wildfire. People who had initially offered sympathy to Sarah were now seeing the full picture. The narrative was no longer psycho boyfriend kicks girlfriend out. It was girlfriend tells boyfriend their relationship is a joke, is shocked when he believes her. Sarah's friends went silent. It's hard to maintain a victim narrative when the villain is posting adorable pictures with his giant dog. The aftermath for Sarah was rough. She crashed with Chloe, but that apparently lasted less than a week. I heard Chloe got tired of Sarah complaining and not contributing to rent. She ended up having to move back in with her parents in a town 3 hours away. She did try to come after me legally. I received a letter from a lawyer demanding access to the house to retrieve her wrongfully held property and demanding financial compensation for being made homeless. My lawyer responded with a copy of my mortgage statement, a copy of the lease which only had my name on it, and a polite inquiry as to whether Sarah would be paying me back for the 6 months of rent, utilities, and food she had consumed while living in my home as a non-married person with no obligations. We never heard from her lawyer again. The funniest part of this whole ordeal came about a month ago. I was at the dog park with Barney. He was happily chasing a tennis ball, and I was talking to another dog owner. A woman approached me hesitantly. It was Penelope, the third siren. She looked incredibly awkward. "Hey, Mark," she said. "Look, I wanted to say I'm sorry about that night at your house. We were out of line." I just shrugged. Sarah said what she said. I just took her at her word. "Yeah, I know," she said, shaking her head. "She's a lot. She called me last week complaining that her parents are making her get a job. She said it was all your fault for ruining her life." She paused and then looked at Barney, who was now trying to fit 3 tennis balls in his mouth at once. "Honestly, it looks like you're doing just fine." And she was right. I am doing just fine. The house is no longer a beige prison. She doesn't either. And that, combined with a giant, drooling dog, is a pretty happy ending.